I am always looking for ways that I can make math hands-on in my classroom, and this is my go-to method for teaching the associative property of multiplication. So with my third grade students, they often have a difficult time recognizing groups within groups and then items within groups that are in larger groups. So of course the word problems, we do give a lot of context, but I always want something that the kids can really do hands-on. So I start by giving each student a full graham cracker. And we then break it up into two pieces, and we talk about how those pieces are broken up into two parts. So you can see that divided line, so they understand this is a group of two and this is a group of two. And it reminds them that everything we're going to do within today's lesson is focused on that group of two. Once we have that established, I pass out the Cool Whip and we add it on as a topping. Now, obviously, having Cool Whip as a topping might not be the best idea for your class, but it really works well with mine. We talk quickly about some procedures with using a knife and about how much Cool Whip should go on. I've done this for many years with third graders and never had an issue. So I again remind students that underneath this Cool Whip, the Cool Whip is just a vessel to hold. Underneath the Cool Whip is two rectangles, and those two rectangles fit within the one square. Then I pass out the chocolate chips, and I ask students to put 3 chocolate chips onto each of the rectangles. So then we talk about how each of the rectangles each of the squares has 2 rectangles, and each rectangle has 3 chocolate chips. And so the associative property tells me that I can first find the number of chocolate chips per square and multiply the number of squares, or I can find the number of rectangles and then multiply it by the number of chocolate chips on each square. And I'm going to get the same total either way. So we talk about how this is 2 times 2, because there's 2 rectangles in each one, times 3. And then we add on another chocolate chip per rectangle. And we again talk about how it is 2 groups of 2 rectangles with 4 on each. Then most years I also pass out yet another set of graham crackers and ask students to make this one have the same amount. So now that I have 4 rectangles, or 4 squares with 2 rectangles on each and 4 chocolate chips on each of the rectangles, we again can write the multiplication equations to help us understand and represent these images. So I talk through what we have in our model. So we have 4 rectangles, and each rectangle has, 4 squares, and each square has 2 rectangles on it. And each of those rectangles has 4 chocolate chips. And so we talk about how I can first solve 4 times 2 to find the number of rectangles I have. So I have 8 rectangles, and each rectangle has 4 chocolate chips on it. But I also can work within each square on its own. So instead of going in that order, I could start by finding that I have 4 chocolate chips per rectangle, and I have 2 squares per rectangle, and I have 4 rectangles. So in this case, I'm also back to 8 times 4. And so the kids can see that we followed the same exact steps to represent it. So if I add a 5th chocolate chip to each one, these numbers change. Or if I take 1 chocolate chip away, which is my favorite, so that we go back to times 3, they really see how the associative property works. Okay, so I let everyone eat 1 chocolate chip, which, oh my gosh, the engagement when you let them have just a little bit. And so now we have, again, our 4 squares, and each square has 2 rectangles, and each rectangle has 3 chocolate chips. So let's talk it through together as we make the equation. So again, we said I have 4 rectangles, and each rectangle has 2 squares, and each square has 3 chocolate chips. So I'm looking at a similar expression to what I just had, and I can begin by finding the amount of rectangles I have, which is 8. And so to find the total number of chocolate chips, I'm going to do 8 times 3. But I can look or think about my model in a different way. So instead of starting with the rectangles and the squares to find how many I have, I'm going to start with the chocolate chips, just like I did last time. So I'm going to say I have 3 chocolate chips on each of my rectangles, and I have 2 rectangles per square. Now I have 4 squares, and so I can multiply these numbers in a different order, and I'm going to get to the same result. 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 times 4 is also 24, just as 8 times 3 is. And so by ensuring, especially, that I have a different digit for each of these, it really helps students see the different order. Also, we can hold up one of our squares at a time to talk about each square at a time. We can cover up one side to really think about what each rectangle is offering. And this really helps my students begin to understand not only the associative property, but how it connects to groups within groups in real life scenarios. I hope it's helpful.